Now, when you react to something in your life, you turn on a primitive nervous system called your fight or flight nervous system. The fight or flight nervous system, the moment you perceive a threat in your external environment, the neocortex associates the image in the external world with the image imprinted in the brain, and it sends a signal to the limbic brain that sends an electrochemical signal down the spinal cord and turns on the adrenal glands. The moment the adrenal glands are turned on, they begin to squirt out a certain amount of adrenaline. The moment the adrenaline is released in the body, there's a physiological change. The pupils dilate, the salivary juices shut down. It's not the time to eat a steak. Your heart rate increases, your respiratory rate increases, and blood is sent to your extremities. And now you're prepared to either fight or run. How many people understand that? And that is for the optimal chances of survival, and this system is very adaptive when there's a threat in your external environment. But it doesn't have to be a lion. It could be your mother-in-law, and the same exact thing happens. You react to the same condition in your life because you had some past experiences with your mother-in-law, and you're viewing your mother-in-law as a predator. And you're knocking your body out of balance by a reaction to something based on your past, and you are turning on the same primitive hormones to cause you to perceive your mother-in-law as a threat through the lens of the past. How many people understand? So now what was once highly adaptive becomes very maladaptive, because the moment you begin to weigh in on your mother-in-law based on a past experience, if you had some stressful events with her, you're going to be ready for the next stressful event, and you're going to try to predict the future based on the past. How many people are with me? So then we're always getting ready for the worst case scenario and protecting ourselves in case something goes wrong. And when we get it right, you know what we say? You need to hang out with me because I'm really smart. But what happens when you don't get it right? That's called anxiety. That's called OCD. That's called insomnia. That's called neurosis. That's called depression, because you're knocking your body out of balance. You still with me? But it doesn't even have to be your mother-in-law. You can auto-suggest. You could think things equal to how you feel, and as you begin to think those certain thoughts, you turn on the stress response just by thought alone, because that thought is where you're putting your attention. And all of a sudden, you activate the amygdala. The amygdala sends a signal to the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus makes a blend of neuropeptides that signals the pituitary. And all of a sudden now, you're sending chemical information. You get a rush of energy now, and your body goes through the same physiological response just by thought alone. How many people are with me? And so then when you turn on the stress response and you can't turn it off, and you become addicted to those thoughts because they carry a high emotional quotient, then sooner or later you keep knocking your body out of balance just by thought alone, and that imbalance becomes the new balance, and now a person is headed for disease because of chemicals of stress push the genetic buttons that create disease. So our thoughts literally can make us sick. How many people are with me? Now, in the first two pictures, that particular syndrome is with the adrenal axis, and that adrenal mechanism down the spinal cord is what I call the fast track. It happens in moments to seconds to hours. This one is called the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. This is the release of cortisol, and cortisol lasts for hours to days. One is short-term, the other is long-term. Cortisol is the anti-inflammation, anti-pain chemical. If you're getting chased by a lion, or you're battling with a tribe of angry tribesmen, the cortisol helps you to reduce the amount of pain in your body, so if you're fighting or you're running, you can do it for an extended period of time. But cortisol, in the long term, begins to break the immune system down, because the chemicals are very, very toxic to the immune system, because all of your energy is going for your external environment, and there's no energy for growth and repair. It's like there's a hurricane coming through Austin. It's an emergency situation. You're not going to think about remodeling your kitchen, right? There's no energy for long-term building projects because the body is interpreting a threat in the external environment. It's not a time to go within. It's not a time for growth. And so if you keep the body in emergency mode, sooner or later there's no energy for growth and repair or long-term building projects. You got that? Poke the person next to you, please. This is called the parasympathetic nervous system. This is the nervous system of relaxation. When you eat that big Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas dinner, all of a sudden your salivary juices increase, your pupils constrict, your blood flow is sent to your internal organs away from your heart, and your body now is in growth and repair. And if I said to you, hey, come on, let's go jump on the trampoline a little bit, you would say, dude, tomorrow. Now, we live in two states of mind. The first state of mind is called survival. That's the animal part of us. Living in survival is living in stress. When you are in stress, you become contracted. You contract from your environment because there's a threat in the external world. We could say that when you contract, you become more particle and less wave. The body goes into catabolism, which is tissue breakdown. There's dis-ease or imbalance that's created. You have degeneration. The primary emotions of fear, anger, and sadness or aggression are the primary emotions that are driven by the hormones of stress. All other emotions like guilt and shame are variations and blends of these. You become selfish. It's all about the self. You define the self as a body living in the environment, living in linear time. Energy is always lost in the system because you're mobilizing enormous amounts of it. You're living in emergency mode, and you become very narrow focus or very object focused. You know, when you're in stress, you're obsessing about one thing all the time. And people are saying, well, what about this and what about that? And you keep viewing the same possibility. You're not open to other possibilities, and you're focusing on your external environment, and you're focusing on an object. You're focusing on a particle, and you're missing or eliminating or editing out possibility. How many people are with me? This is what we say: you feel separate from possibility because you're more matter and less energy. You're more particle and less wave. You're determining reality by your senses, and if you're determining reality by your senses, where you put your attention is where you put your energy, so now you're trapped in 3 dimensions. You're living by cause and effect. There are limited possibilities because you're trying to forecast the future based on the past, and you're missing out on possibilities. How many people are with me? The brain is in a state of incoherence. We'll talk about that after lunch. It's imbalanced. And you are focusing on the knowns because this is not a time to welcome the unknown. It's a time to run from the unknown because there's better chances of survival in running from the unknown. Does that make sense? If a deer is in the forest and all of a sudden a logging truck pulls up and a big machine gets off and starts screeching, and the deer sees this big machine and it's yellow and it hears the sound and it smells the vapor in the air and it tastes the diesel and feels the ground rumbling under its feet, it's going to run from the unknown because there's better chances of survival and fleeing. You with me? So then if you're living by the hormones of stress all day long, wouldn't you agree then you're going to run from any unknown possibility? You know, the aliens are going to land in the backyard, and they're going to have the ship, and you're going to be like, well, can you come back on Tuesday? Dancing with the Stars is on tonight. Or, geez, are you going to have, I don't eat carbohydrates, you guys going to have food for me? You know, we tend to run from the unknown. So then, when you begin to, and by the way, as a side note, there's a reason for that. Because the chemicals of stress, the cortisol, actually begins to denature the fibers in your hippocampus. Your hippocampus is the part of your brain that consolidates memories. It's what makes known the unknown. So then, if you take a group of laboratory rats and you teach them a maze, and they go through a maze, and then you ask these volunteers if they want to donate their hippocampi to science, and they all say yes, of course. And you radiate their hippocampus on both sides. And you put those rats back in the maze. Do you know that they never go to any new areas? They stay in the known. You with me? So then, if you begin to denature the neurons in your hippocampus because of the hormones of stress, you will always crave the familiar. You'll stay in the known and never venture into the unknown. You with me? Now, good news. Because one of the areas of the brain that actually regenerates is called the hippocampus. There's new neurons that grow in the hippocampus every time you learn an experience. So then, if you're damaging the very machinery that crave adventure and crave the unknown, then you have no mechanisms to want to embrace possibility. But if you begin to break the addiction to the hormones of stress and you begin to get beyond them, the hippocampus will naturally regenerate. And all of a sudden, you'll crave adventure again. You'll want to leave the Shire. Stop eating bacon and eggs. Now, our divine aspect of ourself, our creative aspect of ourself, is when we are in homeostasis, when we are expanding, we're emulating the universe. There's anabolism, which is tissue repair. There's health, there's order, there's regeneration. The elevated emotions of love, joy, trust, knowing, gratitude, the natural state of being, all of a sudden become the emotions that drive us to a new future and no longer keep us anchored in the past. We become selfless, which means now we're no longer defining the self as the primary mechanism. The world revolves around us. We are now contributing and wanting to make a difference. We are considering the community. The process of creation requires becoming no thing, nobody, no one, nowhere, no time. Energy is always created in the process of creation. There's growth and repair going on. We tend to open our focus. We see possibilities that we would never see before because now we're no longer limiting our mind. We feel connected to possibility. We're determining reality beyond our senses. We're focusing on the wave instead of the particle. Well, people will say to you, oh, that reality is such nonsense. You say, actually it is. Because I haven't experienced it with my senses yet, but I'll call you when it happens. Because quantum physics is nonsense. Oh, that's so unrealistic. That's right, that reality I'm working on, and I'll call you when it manifests.